So, it's after the flood, and Noach has 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Yafes. And as we know, Ham's son Canaan is cursed to be a slave, and his whole family is a family of slaves. And there's one man in this family who does not like the idea of being a slave. And his name was Nimrod. And Nimrod, he says, I don't want to be a slave. I don't want to be trapped by being just subservient to another human being. I don't want to be controlled. I don't want to be powerless. You know what I'm going to do? If I'm powerful enough, I can be the leader. I can be the conqueror. And he goes out and he begins to put together a band of thugs, of goons, warriors, and they begin to conquer the land. And he starts off with his small group of people, and slowly it expands more and more. And what do you know? One person from the family of Shem, 9th generation, and from the family of Shem we know they were serving Hashem. Shem becomes Malki Tzedek, the king of Shalem, the city of Yerushalayim. And they even have a little yeshiva there. His great-grandson, Aver, joins him and becomes a teacher as well. But the 9th generation son, Terah, he doesn't want to follow this path. He sees Nimrod going out and making his own destiny, and Terah thinks to himself, you know, maybe I could make my own destiny with him as well. And so Terah follows Nimrod. And Nimrod first, when he meets him, he goes a little suspicious. And he looks at Terah and he says, why do you want to come with me? Aren't you from the family of Shem? And he says, yeah, but I also want to make my own destiny. I see what you've done with your life and I want to join that as well. And so Nimrod's a little worried because he does know about the curse. He does know about the prophecy that the family of Canaan should be slaves to his brothers. And this is a man from the family of Shem, a smart, intelligent, powerful young man named Terah. What's going to be? But there's also a part of Nimrod that's very happy. Because if I have Terah and he's my second in command, well, then maybe I can reverse the curse. I could turn things around. I'm going to be on top and the family of Shem will be on the bottom. And so it goes, as the saying goes, you keep your friends close and your enemies even closer. So Nimrod keeps Terah close. He becomes his right-hand man, his general and top advisor, but he also keeps an eye on him. And Nimrod, in his conquests, he begins to move through the Fertile Crescent, from Eretz Yisrael, through Aram Naharaim, all the way down to the lands of Shinar, the valley. And there, by that valley of Shinar, he builds an empire. And in that empire, he rules with a strong force, a powerful hand, with fear. And one of the ways that he instills fear into the people, Nimrod built a huge stadium. And in the center of this stadium is this huge fiery furnace. And they would heat up this fiery furnace, sometimes for a period of up to 7 days, where it would get so hot. And Nimrod would bring the people that were against them, and he would throw them in the fire. And this was a major spectacle. People would come from far and wide. Sometimes it would be a few hundred people to watch a burning, sometimes even a few thousand. And he used this, that anybody who wanted to fight against Nimrod, not only did he come and attack and beat them, but he also would bring his enemies to this big fiery furnace, and it would be a big symbol, and he would make a big show out of it as he would throw them into the fire. Well, there's one interesting thing that happened with Terah. Terah married a woman by the name of Amaslai bas Karnavai, and he and Amaslai were living pretty happily together, but there was one big thing. They never had kids. And as he began to get older, he started thinking to himself, am I going to ever have kids? And even though before the times of Noach, people were having children at very, very late ages in life, but since Noach and Shem, people did not have children that late. In the last few generations before Terah, the latest person to have a child was at 38. And now Terah is getting to 40, 50, and he still doesn't have kids. And he starts thinking about his life. What's the purpose of my life? What am I going to leave behind? What's my legacy going to be like if I don't have any children to leave behind? And he starts thinking about his decisions in life. However, Terah was very, very successful. Being the right-hand man of Nimrod, he was the general. He also was the first person to mint coins. Up until that point, everybody was just trading item for item. And Terah began to mint coins with Nimrod's little face on it. And not only that, he also became an idol maker. He made all sorts of statues and idols, many of them also in the image of Nimrod, because Nimrod himself had declared himself as a god. Not only was he a king and a warlord, but he would claim to be a god. He claimed to hold the power. And he used to tell people, I can kill you, and therefore you need to do what I tell you. You need to listen to me, because I am not just a king, I am not just a warlord, but I am God. The biggest force in the world, that's the God that you should serve. And right now, I, Nimrod, am the biggest force in the world. And so Terah is quite successful, making a lot of money, having quite a powerful name for himself as well. And one day, Nimrod is sitting in his palace, and his astrologers come to him and they say, you know, you are very powerful, but we see in the stars that it looks like there's going to be a Messiah, a Mashiach, a savior to the people that's going to fight against you and pull people away from your godliness to another new way. And so Nimrod gets a little worried. He says, what should we do? He says, you know, how about this? Let's kill all the baby boys, and that way we'll eliminate the chance for the Messiah. And once we see that this star and planetary alignment passes on, then we'll go back to living as normal. And Nimrod agrees, he likes this plan. Terah even comes up with a great plan. He says, let's make a recovery center. We'll invite women from their 7th month to come and be in the recovery center, and when they have their baby, if it's a baby boy, we'll kill them and send them home with a little present. And if not, if it's a baby girl, we'll send them home with their baby. And this will be a space where they can, you know, be healthy, get 3 meals a day, a spa, pool, etc. And this will be a place for them. And Nimrod loves this idea. And what do you know? Just in this time period, Amaslai Bas Karnavai turns to her husband Terah and says, Terah, honey, I'm pregnant. And Terah was already 70 years old, and he was shocked, and he started thinking to himself, whoa, finally a baby? I'm going to have a child? But what's going to be if it's a baby boy? Am I going to kill him? And Terah begins to rethink his life. What am I doing? What am I living for? And he even had this little story that he came up with in his mind, and he thinks about, imagine if I offered a horse all the food in the world, as much oats as it wants, but I'm just going to cut off its head. No horse would want that, even if horses could think. That's ridiculous. You're going to cut off its head? There's no point of living. And Terah thought to himself, I'm a horse. I've been following Nimrod, and I even kind of think that he is God, and I've been following him, and I've been quite successful. But what's going to be if I have to kill my own kid? And so Terah began to really think a lot about this. And one day, Nimrod even calls Terah in, and he says, Terah, I heard your wife's pregnant. And Terah thinks to himself, and he says, you know, Nimrod, you should know I decided, because I followed you and my life has been great, if I have a boy, I'll be willing to kill him for you. And Nimrod smiles, and he goes, Terah, I knew I can count on you. I know you're my right-hand man. And as Terah left, Nimrod thought to himself, oh, he better kill that kid if it's a boy. And he kept his eye real close on Terah. And when Terah's wife hit her 7th month, and Terah told him, no, don't worry, we'll keep her home, it'll be okay. Don't worry, if it's a boy, we'll kill him. Nimrod was kind of getting a little worried. And what do you know? Vayhi hayom, the day comes, and this little baby's born, this beautiful little Avram. And Terah was so filled with happiness for having a child. And the whole house was like filled with light. Everybody was walking around with a smile on their face. Finally, Terah and Amaslai had a baby, but they also began to think, what's going to be? Is he going to kill him? And Terah takes his little baby after 2-3 days and goes out to the hills. And he's walking around thinking about his life. And he starts thinking about the God of his fathers, the God of Shem, the God of Aver. And he thinks to himself, what am I doing? I'm going to kill this baby? I'm going to have nothing behind me? What have all the gods that I've been worshiping my whole life actually done for me? So yeah, I have power, I have money, but do I have meaning? Do I have purpose? And he looks down at this beautiful little baby that fills him with so much light and happiness. And he looks up and he says, God, I don't know who you are, but if you are something, here's your baby back. I'm going to put him in a little cave. And he covered the whole of that cave, and he said, God, it's in your hands. I don't really know who you are. I don't know what you are, and I don't know what your plan is. But here he is. And Terah walks back to his home, and he goes to the slaves' quarters, and he takes one of the babies from the slave families. And he takes this little baby boy without even talking to Amaslai, his wife, and he goes straight to Nimrod's palace. And he comes into Nimrod's palace, and Nimrod's there. Everybody's like tense. What's going to happen now? And Terah turns to Nimrod and he says, in front of everybody who's here, I thought to myself, and I considered, what's going to be? Imagine if I offered a horse all the oats in the world, just cut off your head. Would it be worth it? And here, I've gotten so much from being your general, Nimrod. I've been your general, I've been your right-hand man. But to kill my own kid? And everybody around was getting tense and Nimrod's face got real stern. And Terah said, but you should know, Nimrod, I consider you a god. Not just a king or a warlord, I consider you a god. And because of that, he pulls out his knife and he kills the baby right there in front of everybody. And Terah says goodbye to Nimrod and comes home, and you can imagine when he gets home to his wife, Amaslai says, so what happened? And he says, I killed the baby. And Amaslai cries and he cried. But in his back of his mind, he's thinking to himself, what's going to be? And Hodu Lashem, the Gezerah, the decree from Nimrod passes, and they end up allowing baby boys to live, and Amaslai gets pregnant again, and they have another kid, Haran, and another son named Nachor, and the kids begin to grow up. And meanwhile, this little Avram is in his cave. And Hashem made a miracle where he was nourished, just as if he was nursing from his mother. He nursed from the ground. But he didn't have any sun. His skin had never seen the beautiful day. His body had never been warmed by the sun. And he would crawl around in that cave for 3 years, crawling around in that little cave. Almost like a little naked mole rat, a cute little Avram just crawling around, growing up, but all alone by himself in a cave. And one day when he was about 3 years old, Avram's crawling around in that cave, and he sees in the floor of the cave a gorgeous diamond that was so bright that his eyes had never seen anything. He'd been living in darkness his whole life, and suddenly his eyes perceive something so bright and so beautiful, and his eyes are blinded at first, but he's like, I need that, and he starts digging, and as he's digging for this diamond, he can't grab it, but he digs deeper, and it gets bigger and bigger, and as he uncovers it, it's this shining diamond, and his eyes are burned out, and he's like, wow, the energy coming off of this diamond filled his little body with so much energy. He felt like for the first time, he was being infused with a life force, with almost like a purpose for living, an energy, and he needed this diamond, and he digs even more and more and more until finally he breaks through and he realizes it's not a diamond, it's a hole. And for the first time in his little life, he breaks through this hole, he pulls his body through, and he flops out outside of the cave on fresh green grass. And for the first time in his life, he feels the sun baking down on his cute little body. And that energy of feeling the sun on his warm body just felt like he was being fused by the life of all life forces, energy coursing through his body. And obviously at first he can't even look at the sun because it's so bright, but slowly peeking through his fingers, he sees the beautiful world that there is, the green trees and the flowers and the plants and the grassy hill, and there's a beautiful stream nearby. And all the way up in the sky is this gorgeous orb of fire that's just shining down on all of creation. And as he looks around, he sees that all of creation is reaching its arms. Every tree has its branches and its leaves are opened up to receive that beautiful sunlight. And every flower, beautiful colors, pinks and purples and oranges and yellows, every petal opened up to receive the energy of the true source of everything. And Avram spends this day just enraptured with this wonderful energy of receiving from the sun, filling his whole body, and he's just praying to the sun. You are the most incredible giver of all life to everything. You are the source of it all. And he's literally worshiping the sun with his whole heart, that little beautiful heart of Avram. and with everything that his mind can comprehend, in a passionate ecstasy, he's just worshiping this gorgeous sun. All day long, he's there receiving energy and just worshiping and thanking this gorgeous sun. After hours of passion, the end of the day comes, and Avram sits there with his mouth open in shock and awe as he watched the sun go down in the most beautiful sunset, the first sunset of his life. We all know what it's like when you see a gorgeous sunset. It's breathtaking. It's gorgeous. The colors in the sky and the energy that passes through after a full day of bright sun energy in the Middle East. Here, suddenly Avram is feeling the cool breeze and he's watching the sun go down. And he's thinking to himself, where is this sun going? And he begins to reflect on his day. Wow, what an intense day. He broke through from inside his cave. And as he's sitting there thinking, he suddenly looks up in the sky and he notices an even more beautiful, glowing white orb in the sky, the moon. And he looks at this moon, it's beautiful. And it's not bright and burning and penetrating and overwhelming like the sun. It's gentle and calm. And it gives him the space to reflect inwards. For the first time, he was able to think about his own journey. And he began to reflect on what happened to him in his life. And as he's sitting there, introspective and thinking, he looks up and he sees that around the moon there's a beautiful army of stars twinkling into existence. 1, 2, 3, and every time he looks at one star, he sees not only one, there's 3, there's 4, there's 8, there's 12, 13, 14 stars in the sky, and he's blown away. He goes, wow, what is this? And as the sky gets darker, he sees what's happening to the world. Suddenly there's a gentleness, a calmness. The trees begin to almost close into themselves. The flower petals close, and the sounds of the river running nearby comes to him more clearly. At nighttime, when you don't have the heat pouring off the sun, so the sound waves aren't pushed into the sky, the sound waves are able to be relaxed. You could hear the world around you, and you can even hear yourself more clearly at night. And Avram begins to think, wow, I thought the sun was the creator. The sun gave amazing energy, but this, the ability for me to internalize and be myself, this must be the creator of the world. This must be what all the purpose of this world is. And as though the trees were huddled together and joining in prayer, as if the army of stars were bowing down to the moon, so too Avram, in his own inner journey, began to worship the moon. And all night long he prayed to the moon, watching it as it went through the night sky. And after a night of prayer and worship to the beautiful moon and her army of stars, he begins to see the skies are getting bright. And he wonders to himself, what's happening now? What's actually going on? And he sees the sky begins to get brighter, and the stars, one after the next, twinkle out of existence. The moon sets, and in a glorious, most amazing sunrise, he watches the King of Day come back to his throne. And that sun rises up and shines once again, and all of the world begins to wake up. All the birds begin to twitter and tweet and make beautiful songs. And even the flowers and the plants begin to reopen themselves to receive the beautiful energy of the sun. And this was the moment that Avram Avinu, who is the one who established the morning prayers for us, Shacharis, this was the time that he prayed his first Shacharis. And as he began to pray this morning, his prayer to himself went something like this. I've seen the most incredible experience of my life the last 24 hours. I saw the sun, the king of the day, and the moon, the king of the night. But I also know that this balance, the sun and moon, the day and the night, the right and the left, the male and the female, this balance of things that are happening inside of me. And he looked down at himself. He has a right arm and a left arm, and a mind and a heart, thoughts and emotions. He said, all of these things that are made up of twos, there must be one source. There must be one reason There must be one creator that created both the day and the night, the sun and the moon, and all the powers in this world. And what is the purpose for this life? What is the purpose for my meaning? And little Avram, at 3 years old, promised himself, he swore, he said, I am going to search the rest of my life to find the true creator. This last 24 hours of prayer where I worshiped the sun and I worshiped the moon was incredible, but I want to find the true purpose, the ultimate meaning. What are we really here for? And Avram swore to himself in that moment. And that's why the great rabbis tell us that at 3 years old, Avram found God. Not that he actually had a relationship with God at that moment, but when he committed himself to that relationship, saying, I will find you, and I will find the purpose and meaning, and I will connect to it, and I will dedicate my life to this journey, that already, at the beginning of the journey, that's already called finding God. And that moment, he committed himself. In that early morning, watching the sun rise, he committed and he promised, I will find the Creator, I will serve that Creator, and I will find my purpose in this world. Chai.